Body cameras might not be as secure as we previously believed. They tell us we have nothing to fear. I'm not so sure. Do you trust the police to have your best interests at heart?
Leading Britain's conversation. George Galloway. This morning from 10 on LBC.
Right, let's get some of your emails, texts and tweets into the conversation. Probably haven't done enough about those. And the subject of the dentist, Gary says, I've been to the dentist twice in the past 30 years, only to have fillings replaced that were put in needlessly when I was a child. I floss, clean and rinse regularly. The cleanliness of my teeth has been remarked upon by dentists on my rare visits. If dentists had not taken advantage of the system when I was a child and filled my face full of fillings, I might trust them. Well, Gary, you're fortunate, and I'll read that, but with a health warning, that doesn't mean that just because you're blessed with good, strong teeth, everyone is. This is interesting. Rose says, I'm a teacher. I taught forensic science. We had difficulties every year explaining how bodies can be identified by dental records because it is unusual for any student in the class to have ever seen a dentist. My goodness. On the subject of private versus state education, Sharon tells me private school isn't just about the grades. My son is about to go back to his second year at Oxford. Yes, he's there because he got his grades, but also because of the style of education he got at private school and the confidence it gave him to perform under pressure. Worth every penny. This one comes in from Bruno Govia. You've nailed it. We pay privately to have our children growing with the kids and the families that we ourselves identify with. The marks are important. The kids that will become friends of our children are the most important thing. All right, thank you. Let's talk dentistry. Genevieve's in Crystal Palace. Hello, Genevieve.
Oh, hello. Good morning, Nick.
You're on the radio. What can you tell me?
I just wanted to clear something up because I actually went to my dentist last week and I asked her straight. I said, what is the problem with the contract that you have?
Oh, yeah.
And how she explained it to me was that there are 3 bands of payment, and before, dentists used to get paid for everything they did at that time. So one filling, they'd get paid. Now on these levels, she explained, whether you have 1 filling or 10 fillings, they get paid the same amount. And that is the issue.
Well, the dentist just paid us, told us they were paid in band levels. Do you remember on the amount?
Everything up to that £50, £55 band is fillings.
Right.
So as she explained it to me, if you have 1 filling, we charge £55. If you have 10, that's what we charge.
Yes.
And as she explained it to me, I could see that it was slightly unfair.
Yes.
Because they just, and as that other chap, he said that he went and had the crown and he paid $250. If he needed 3 crowns, he still would have paid the $250 because that's the maximum you pay.
Yeah, it's a difficult job anyway, I would imagine.
No, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. And but I do feel that is the issue with the dentists, is that there's these 3 bands and they feel that it's unfair because no matter how much work they do in that band, that's all they get paid.
Thank you for that. More dentistry in a moment. Judy and Brentwood to talk about private versus state. Which do you think is superior and why? Hello.
Well, to be honest, I think both are in certain ways, because if you think of, say, Chelmsford County High and Keggs, they will take...
Sorry, what's Keggs? Is that King Edward Grammar, I assume,
yeah, that's right. They will take the absolute top children of their academic standard.
Right.
And therefore it's not surprising that they can get higher, some state schools can get higher grades. But, private schools, don't they? They differ so hugely. And when my son went to Eltham, which you'll know, I'm sure.
I do.
Yeah.
I know it quite well.
When he was there, they took assisted places as well, which I thought was absolutely fantastic, and so did they at Bromley High School in those days. And so both, the children mixed with everybody, and after all, children are children.
Well, you got that right. No one can dispute that.
What I mean is that, you could be a bus driver and decide, well, we're going to, perhaps not, but you know what I mean? People can, from all walks of life, can decide we won't have holidays, we won't have this, we won't have that. This is what we'll do, because, for children to enjoy their school life and the parents to be part of it and all part of it, I don't know what you found, but I just found it worked really brilliantly.
Yep, I agree with that, but of course it was, as I'm sure it was for you, it was a financial sacrifice.
Of course.
but worth every penny. All right, thank you for that. It's dentistry that's got you talking, though, I have to say. Judy, thank you. Norman's in Paddington. What can you tell me about it, Norman? Good morning.
Good morning to you, Nick. Look, I've heard all this talk about bans and you have so many fillings and the dentist gets paid this and that. The truth of the matter is that what we need to recognise that the dental industry in this country is a national disgrace.
Why?
It is because it's not run in a proper way. Dentists can take advantage of the system. It's not monitored properly. There's not enough investment to the National Health Service in dentistry.
We spend £2 billion a week on the National Health Service. How much more do you want?
It's how you spend it and how it's managed. That is the problem, because there's so many dentists that have been taken before the courts because they have been making false claims. There's a lot of scandal regarding dentistry. I honestly believe this, and I know from personal experience, in the sense that you can probably hear I've got my plate out at the moment, so my voice is a bit strange. But the truth of the matter is there should be a lot of education as well. It needs a total revamp, it really does, and I'm not surprised, as you said earlier, that a lot of them aren't just running around in Jaguars. I dare say a few of them have got Bentleys and Rolls Royces. It's a scandal, it really is, and we're not being served well by the National Health Service with regard to dentistry, and it needs a public inquiry, it needs a revamp.
Whoa. You've just heard a dentist explain that they're not happy with it either.
Well, then it's the government's fault, isn't it, if they're not happy? So we need the government...
No, hang on. Why? Whoa. If firefighters are unhappy, we wouldn't say it's the government's fault, would we?
Of course we do, but it's the management. The management of the...
Yeah, OK, so the management of the firefight... Hold on. The management of the firefighters, not just the management of the dentists, aren't government appointed.
The fact of the matter is they oversee the National Health Service, the government, and the way it deals with National Health Service patients. Throughout this country, I believe it's not so bad in the towns. There are people struggling to find dental work, dentists, so that they can have the satisfactory dental work done. I'm not joking. I'm very serious about this. I think your listeners should contact their MPs, should demand that we have a better dental service that we can be proud of and not have to fly off to Europe to get sort of implants that are half the price abroad that they are here.
Norman, thank you. Staying with dentistry. Andy's in Bolton. You're on the radio, Andy. Hello.
Hi, Nick. My fiancée is actually a dentist, and she just left the NHS to work with the RAF as a dentist.
Oh, right.
Basically because of the contract that she's on with the NHS. People think that when they go and they have a fill-in and they pay £50, the dentist gets £50. The dentist doesn't. They get what they call a UDA, which might be £10 or £11 out of the 50, and basically what the government have basically turned dentistry into piecework, because if a dentist doesn't hit the target for the month, then the government claws, or the NHS claws back money from the dentist. So say, for example, a dentist is on a contract that's worth, for example, £5,000 a month.
Yeah.
If they don't hit the target, they could claw back, potentially.
But how hard is it to hit the target? Is that target easily attainable, or is it very difficult?
Well, it depends on the area, If people don't turn in, obviously, for an appointment, there's no sort of comeback then. The dentist loses out on that target. If the dentist has a full week of exams, they're not going to hit the targets again.
All right, good luck to your fiancée. Thank you, please. Excuse me, moving on. Got time, I think, for one more. Holly is in Sydenham. Holly, you're a teacher. Which sort of school do you think your children should go to?
Private school, 100%. And I've had the conversation with people...
do you teach in a private school?
I don't, no. I teach in state school.
What is it about private schools that you think is superior?
I think the overall level of education and the chances that students are given, and I think, I firmly believe in the school system. I love the fact that, we live in a country where children do have a right to an education. But I do feel that at some point, the kids that are from, homes that have mum and dad that go to work don't get as many opportunities as, say, the children that, are on free school meals or... don't come from such privileged backgrounds.
How much of a financial sacrifice will it be for you and your partner or husband to do this?
Well, I'm 30 and I can't afford to have children as yet. So
Right.
I'd like to at some point, but I think I've definitely altered my perception on, how many children I would like. I think realistically, I would only be able to have one child because I will only be able to afford to send one child to private school.
That's how important it is for you. Holly, thank you. I wish we'd spoken earlier. You had the last word of the week. Enjoy your holidays and good luck with what you want to achieve for your child. I am done for another day. Somebody once said a week is a long time in politics. Said many of you it's not been long enough for George Galloway. It's his final performance for now. He's the other side of the news on LBC. I'm back with you Monday morning from 7. Meantime, have a safe weekend.
Thank you, Nick. It's been a pleasure. Later on, I'm talking about sorry being the hardest word, but not for Jeremy Corbyn, who has said issuing an apology for the party for their part in the Iraq war will be one of his first priorities. What should the next Labour leader make as his first priorities? At 11, I'm talking about the tough subject, dementia. Researchers are telling us this morning that we are not in for the epidemic that was at first predicted, but I'll be asking just how hard it is to care for someone who develops such an illness. But first, I'm looking at the issue of police body cameras. They tell us we have nothing to fear. I am not so sure. Do you trust the police to have your best interests at heart? I'm George Galloway for LBC. All next.
FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 10 o'clock, the Home Secretary is being asked to investigate how footage recorded on cameras worn by police in London is stored. 5 forces in the UK, including the Met, use a system where the video is automatically uploaded onto the servers of an American company. Emma Carr is from privacy campaign group Big Brother Watch. She's told LBC Theresa May needs to step in.
These findings are of particular concern because of the potentially sensitive and confidential nature of all of this footage that's being gathered by police forces. If these cameras are going to be used, we as the public need to know that that data is going to be kept safe. We can't necessarily know that if that data isn't being held within the police forces themselves.
Scotland Yard has told LBC the American company which supplies the system is unable to access the information. Jeremy Corbyn says he will apologise for the Iraq war on behalf of the Labour Party if he's elected its leader next month. Mr Corbyn claims Tony Blair took Britain into the conflict on the basis of deception. Former NATO commander Rear Admiral Chris Parry has told LBC mistakes were made.
Wars are very fast-moving situations. Mistakes do happen. They've happened in every conflict in which Britain has been involved. I'm not quite sure what we're apologising for. A previous inquiry said there was no deception. We have to believe that, of course.
It says there are reports the Chilcot inquiry into the conflict will criticise the current head of the armed forces, Sir Nicholas Houghton. Union leaders say they will meet on Monday to decide whether to go ahead with 2 planned 24-hour strikes on the London Underground. Negotiations with transport bosses are due to continue today at the Conciliation Service ACAS. 3 unions are planning to walk out next week in the ongoing row over pay and conditions linked to the new all-night tube service. Fears of a huge increase in the number of people getting Alzheimer's may have been exaggerated. Scientists have found the proportion of over 65s with dementia in 2011 was a fifth lower than predicted in 1990. Improving healthcare and living conditions are thought to be behind it, but Dr Eric Caron from Alzheimer's Research UK has told LBC our ageing population could mean an increase in dementia rates in future.
Age is the greatest risk factor for Alzheimer's disease, which is the major cause of dementia. So really, these prevalences can change with society's environment, and what we can't predict is what are the changes that are happening now, how that will be reflected in the prevalence of dementia in 20 or 30 years' time.
The military in North Korea has been ordered to be fully ready for action. Leader Kim Jong-un has declared a semi-state of war with South Korea after both sides fired shells over the border. A far-left faction of Greece's ruling Syriza party have split from the group and are forming their own party ahead of likely upcoming elections there. It follows the resignation yesterday of the country's Prime Minister. The 25 policymakers have announced their decision to become independent in a letter to Parliament. Weather forecasters say we're going to be hit with a Spanish plume this weekend. It means a stream of air from the continent will make it hot and humid in London and the southeast, but there's a warning it'll be followed by heavy rain and thunderstorms. At 9:45, the FTSE 100 was down 34 at 63.33. And LBC weather, mostly dry with some bright or sunny spells developing for London and the southeast. Highs today of 25 degrees. A mostly cloudy start for England and Wales with patchy, drizzly rain. Sunnier though this afternoon. Breezy with a few showers for Northern Ireland. Mainly dry with sunny spells for Scotland. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Lisa Aziz.
Is frequent heartburn keeping you up at night? Well, there is a new way you can protect yourself and target zero heartburn. New Nexium Control for 24-hour protection from frequent heartburn by controlling acid at the source. Nexium Control. Try it yourself. Just one pill a day for 24-hour protection and target zero heartburn. Look for the purple pack in store and get one step ahead of heartburn with Nexium Control. Gastro-resistant tablets, contains esomeprazole. Always read the leaflet.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with George Galloway. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. George Galloway on LBC.
My last day standing in for the great James O'Brien. He'll be back next week. I'll be talking about Jeremy Corbyn and the apology that he says he wants to make on behalf of Labour over the Iraq War. I'll be talking about the very difficult subject of dementia. But first, I'm looking at the issue of these police body cameras. If we'd had them in the Duggan affair, we'd know exactly what happened. We did have them, though not police cameras, in the Ian Tomlinson affair. So we definitely need cameras, but do they need to be sourced in the United States of America? In a private, profit-making company? That's what we're discussing now. I mean, it's a serious point, but it leads to the question, do you trust the police to have your best interests at heart? There can be no argument that the body cameras are a good thing. They're routine, actually, in the United States. They don't solve every problem. But if we'd had them, for example, in Tottenham, on the Mark Duggan affair, we'd know exactly, beyond contradiction, who did what, when, to whom. And then, maybe the riots in London would not have happened. Certainly the standing of the police in the Tottenham area amongst black people in particular would be rather different from what it is today. And it's not great, I can tell you. And the Tomlinson affair showed the importance of moving images. When Ian Tomlinson, a newspaper seller, unexpectedly died, everyone at first, no doubt, believed the police account, that he had been behaving aggressively, that they had no choice but to move him on, and that the death had been entirely accidental, even inexplicable. But a mobile phone was in action. And we saw, a day or so later, what actually happened. That Ian Tomlinson was beaten from behind by a police officer. There was a police dog involved. Tomlinson was not behaving aggressively in any way. And the cameras were damning, really. So the idea that we should have body cameras on police officers, it's a melancholy fact, no doubt, but it's a fact, nonetheless, that it will protect police officers who are behaving properly and going about their duty in a regular fashion, and it will protect the public from those officers who are not. But the reason why this is at the top of the news this morning is that the footage thus obtained ends up in the United States. Doesn't seem to make any sense. Why would we need a company in the United States? Why would we need a private company at all? Haven't we learned any lessons? Hasn't the acronym G4S not actually lodged in anyone's mind anywhere? Don't we know that official documents, and that's what these would be, these films, official documents, are really best kept by the state and here at home. So, this is part of a bigger argument that we touched on earlier in the week, quite memorably, I think, when we talked about the police and race. Who will ever forget Carl, the serving police officer, who came on the line earlier in the week with me and said, well, you know, black people all look alike. What can we do? That's not the words he used, but everybody listening knows that's exactly what he said, which is probably why he hung up and ran away 3/4 of the way through the conversation. I don't know if his name really was Carl. I can't even know if he really is a serving police officer. But it does feed in, doesn't it, to a feeling abroad in the land that the police cannot be trusted as they once could. When I was young, the police were people that you respected. They seemed a very respectable crew. Allo, 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 as Dixon of Dock Green used to say. We've come a long way from that, haven't we? I want to say, as I did say earlier in the week, my experience with the police has been with one sordid exception, which I won't go into, overwhelmingly a positive one. When I was attacked in the street almost exactly a year ago, in fact within a day or two of being exactly a year ago, although I'm still limping, the police performed magnificently. Police women, actually, captured the assailant, who's now in prison, captured him within minutes of my calling them, and very bravely, too. I have had nothing but the best service from the Metropolitan Police in London. Even when I broke down one night, ran out of petrol, actually, at the Elephant and Castle, late in the evening on a Saturday night, driving back from Bradford. I was in a very difficult situation. Early hours of the morning, a known face in the Elephant with no petrol and unable to get any service from either the RAC or the AA anytime soon. And the police looked after me really, really well. So I'm not against the police at all. If ever I was in a position to help the police, I would. But they have to face the fact, I know that they, or at least I hope that they want to face the fact, that amongst the wider public, particularly, and this is a city, London, where more than half of the people belong to the minority communities, so the minorities are the majority in London, amongst many of these communities, trust in the police is very, very low. And so if film taken by police body cameras is ending up with a private company somewhere in the United States, there are many people who are going to be anxious about that, and that will feed into this wider lack of trust in the police. So, do you trust the police to have your best interests at heart? That's my question. It's at the top of the news today, somewhat to my surprise, because it has suddenly been understood that actually that which we thought might actually take us forward might end up actually taking us back, because the misuse of such data is potentially serious and obvious. And I think the police are going to have to look again at the way that they are using and deploying these cameras, and particularly the film, the images that are shot on these cameras. I don't understand why, for example, a department of the Independent Police Complaints Commission cannot be entrusted with this footage. That would keep it in-house, keep it in Britain, and keep it in an institution that, despite one or two hiccups, has a relatively high reputation, the IPCC. Melinda's the first caller up, and she's in West Hampstead. Melinda, welcome.
Hi, George. I just want to say that I've been listening to LBC for 9 years, and I'll pick up the phone today just to say it's been a pleasure, really a pleasure listening to you. And please, if there's any way you can stay on LBC, just stay. Because I know you're covering for James O'Brien, which I like James O'Brien very much too. But please, if you just stay on LBC.
That's very, very kind of you, Melinda. I'm sure the management are listening.
That's all I want to say. And I do agree with you on the police. I do agree. They're not to be trusted, and that's all I want to say.
It is a pity, though. I would never inquire into a lady's age, but there was a time when the police were trusted, at least in my community. Maybe in London there's always been a bit more of a problem, but up in Scotland, in the Scottish town in which I was brought up, in Dundee, we actually all respected the police. They even lived in the community. They had a parade of police houses that were council houses just like ours, but slightly better. But the police all lived there and people respected them. But that doesn't seem to be the case anymore.
No, not at all. And like I said, I don't mind saying my age. I'm 47. I'm proud of my age. 47, going to be 48 next month. And no, you're right. The police, it wasn't like that. And a lot of things have changed and, not for the better. And it's very sad, I think. Very sad indeed.
Maybe we're at a turning point, Melinda, and we'll be talking about Jeremy Corbyn later. Let's see if there's a turning point implied in that. Melinda, thanks for your very kind comments and for listening. And I want to know, do you trust the police? It's really that simple. Let's hear from Christine in Wanstead.
Yeah, hello, George.
Hi.
Nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
And thank you for taking my call. No, George, I don't trust the police. I used to. I don't trust a lot.
What happened? Why did you change?
Well, I'll tell you why. I was up in the high street one day. There was one black fella, and he'd been he'd done shoplifting wrong, I know, but it took 10 of them to get him down. Then another instance happened they couldn't wait. We tase you. They jumped on him, bounced on his head. And another time I was in Asda, and they took another man down. These guards, supervisors.
Security guards, private security, yeah?
Guards,
Mm-hmm.
Yes. They pulled this young fella's, literally pulled his trousers down, so he's showing everything he had for a little son. He's only young. And, I don't agree with shoplifting. I don't agree. I know something's got to happen, but it doesn't take 10, 20 people, officers, to jump on one man. And when I went up, I said, excuse me, to police officer, one police officer, he came from Leighton Police Station, actually. I said, I want your name and number, go away, he said. I said, I've seen the way you're treated, that young fella, go away, he said. He said, F off. He actually told me to F off, or he'll have me arrested.
Well, Dixon would never have done that.
No, definitely not. Years ago, George, please, that we could go up to what we called the bobbies, as the lady said years ago.
Yeah, you were told if you were ever in trouble, go up to them.
We could go up there and, we used to have a policeman.
Remember, we used to have police boxes, Christine.
Yes, that's right. Yes, in Palmerston Road, Brook Road, where I was lived, where I used to live, we used to have them all going up Palmerston Road, and it was so lovely. Good morning. My brothers, if we ever went scrumping and we said, and we got caught in the police and say, you're not climbing someone's fence and get an apple. We knew, we were told. But now, it's, it's like the trigger happy. With them tasers, down. It takes 10 of them, and they should stop. I know we shouldn't break the law, and I know, that people do, but the way they go in with the dogs and kick the doors in, I've had my neighbours do.
You think it's a kind of militarisation of the police, yeah?
Yes, I do.
They're becoming like an army, becoming like an occupation army, as they're seen in some parts of London. On the other hand, they're wearing this body armour and so on, and carrying these things because actually quite a lot of people attack them. I was talking to a couple of young officers recently, and I made the mistake of saying, look, have you ever been assaulted? And they laughed because, of course, as police officers, they've been assaulted quite often.
All of them, yes.
There is good and bad. There's good and bad coppers. There's good and bad radio presenters.
Yes.
There's good and bad people in Wanstead. Christine, thanks for that lovely call. Trip down memory lane. Nick is in Christchurch in Dorset. Let's hear from him.
Yeah, morning. I just want to say that I've had dealing with the police most of my life, and I've recently, in July, been sentenced by Taunton Crown, which was for a community sentence, which they shouldn't really give me. I was well past the threshold to custody, but they gave me one more chance. And it's basically joyriding. Well, I say joyriding, it's not putting pursuits on these larger vehicles, buses, coaches and trucks. And on this occasion, it was a double-decker bus. And I'll pull over straight away. In fact, I pull over straight away, even if they don't trust me to pull over. And I think because I'm reasonable with them...
You were joyriding a double-decker bus, have I got that right?
That's correct. Yeah, actually, if you look in the papers...
You crazy or what?
Sorry?
Are you crazy? Why would you joyride a double-decker bus? Can't you see the dangers of that?
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, I'm just obsessed with driving, but I don't race round, and I pull over for the sheer principle that if the police had an accident in pursuit of me, in effect, I'd be responsible for that, wouldn't I? Because I didn't pull over, and I always do pull over.
Is this a wind-up, or is this real?
No, this is real. If you look on...
What did you mean when you said you were beyond the threshold for custody? In what sense?
Well, I was well past the threshold for custody, and the Crown Court in Taunton, they gave me one last chance to do an intensive probation course.
Uh-huh.
And that was good. I mean, can I give you my name?
No.
National? No.
No. Let's hear from James in Orpington. James, welcome.
Morning, George. How are you?
By the grace of God, I'm good, thank you.
Jolly good. I think the question was, do we trust the police?
Yes.
I think I do.
Tell me.
I think for the reasons where I've had to use the police, and I'll tell you the last reason I had to use them, I was the subject of a homophobic rant and rave and a threat to my life down the telephone. The police were on my front door within an hour, and they were very helpful and they were very courteous and they dealt with the situation for me. And then the last time I had to use them, it was to help me undo the petrol cap on my car, and they helped me with that as well.
Now, this is in Orpington, which is obviously not Tottenham, and that may account for a part of the difference here. The experience you've had is the same as the experiences I've had, but then I'm surmising both you and I are white men of a certain age. Maybe that also is one of the reasons for the difference in perception of the police. What do you think, James?
Well, I was polite, I was courteous, I was thankful for their time. Mm-hmm. I was all the things I would be to any other individual, actually. Just because they were in uniform, I treated them no differently. Perhaps that was it.
And has that been your universal experience? You've never had a bad experience with the police?
No.
Ever been stopped and searched, James?
No, never.
Maybe that's the difference. Thanks, James in Orpington. Dennis is in Bagshot.
Hi.
On you go, Dennis.
I'm an ex-police officer. I'm 85 years old. I was a constable in the Metropolitan Police. I joined in 1950 when I came...
Did you serve alongside Dixon?
No.
Where was Dock Green supposed to be, do you think?
It was supposed... Well, it's some mythical part of West London.
Okay.
But what I want to say is that the morale of the rank and file, constables in the Metropolitan Police now, is rock bottom.
Yeah.
Because senior officers in my day had joined as constables and worked their way through the ranks and had got actual street experience.
Yeah, now they're taking them from Marks and Spencer's and from the commercial world, aren't they?
Yes, but I mean, senior officers today they've been parachuted in with university degrees. I'm not against that, but they know nothing about actual street duty. They've never done it. And that's one of the problems you've got in the Met.
Yeah. I mean, I do hear that from officers. On the other hand, you know, police is a very, very big industry now. I was looking at the budget for the London mayoralty, and the billions of pounds that are spent on the police. It's very, very big business. And
yeah,
it has to be run professionally, doesn't it?
Yeah, but they spend it in the wrong way. Because the police, the people that are running the police, have no real, what I call, police experience. They've never arrested anybody. Mm-hmm. They've never been out on the street. And that's the problem.
They're also effectively looking for their officers only in London now in the Met, aren't they? I mean, in the past, officers came from all over the country to work in the Met. That's less and less true.
On promotion, yeah, but that's another thing that has damaged the Metropolitan Police is you've had assistant chief constables come in from some small county force into the Met. They've no idea what goes on in London. I mean, it's just a totally different world. But I must say this, George, I really enjoyed your programme this week.
Thank you, Dennis.
I mean, particularly on Monday when you were going on about the Labour Party.
Well, I'm going on about it again today, so stay tuned, Dennis.
Thank you very much, and I hope LBC take you on permanently.
Thank you, Dennis. You're a gentleman. Well, we are talking about the police. Dennis is 85 years young and an ex-police officer who knows a thing or two about policing. And I think his point was that some of the people at the top in the Met maybe know a bit about accounting, they maybe know a bit about sociology, they maybe know a bit about philosophy, but they don't actually have the street experience that is required to survive down there and to prosper in the sense of doing the job well. I stress, again, I have nothing against the police, but many people in London do, and that is a problem. I'm asking, because the news has hit us this morning, that police cameras might not be as secure as first believed. Do you, with your experiences, still trust the police? It's a simple question, really. Do you believe the police have your best interests at heart? What have your experiences been? Do you trust the police? I'm asking because news, indeed main news, hit us this morning that police cameras might not be as secure as first believed. We're talking about these body cameras that the police wear about their uniform and which show exactly what they did and what was done to them. Although the camera, of course, can lie, it's a lot better than not having a camera at all. Trevor is on the line in Cumbria. Trevor, welcome.
Hello, George.
Hi.
Well, I'm a street musician, and I've been a street musician since I was 26.
Okay.
And I'm now 73.
Oh, my goodness.
And I still do it. And in all that time, I've never met a bad policeman.
Well, that's terrific. May I ask where you ply your trade?
Sorry?
Where do you ply your trade?
All over the place. I've been to Paris, up south of France, Spain, London.
Fantastic.
At the moment, I tend to...
What do you play, Trevor?
I play guitar and sing songs.
Oh, and you're 76 and you've been doing it
73.
for... 73, so you've been doing it for more or less 50 years?
Yeah.
And you never met a bad copper in any country?
No, actually, no, not in any country.
That's fantastic. I hope you've had a few coppers in your hat. Has it been lucrative?
I was nicked once when I was doing St Anne's Court in Soho, and this policeman come, he said, I'm going to nick you. I only nick you once, I'll never nick you again. And he nicked me. But he never nicked me again.
Oh, wonderful. Trevor, that's a heartwarming story.
Yeah.
A vote of confidence from the buskers of the nation in the British, indeed international, police forces. They'll never nick you again, Trevor, not after that call. Peter is in Surbiton. Let's hear from him. Go ahead, Peter.
Hello, George. Love the show, Bowman.
Thanks, mate.
I did 23 years in the Met Police. A few years ago, I played bagpipes at weddings and funerals. I've just been played at a birthday party in Orpington in Kent, and 10:30 at night, and I had a puncture. I called the AA, and they said 45 minutes. That was fine. Minutes later, one of the police riot wagons turns up, parks up, and two huge guys got out the car and said, are you all right, sir? I thought it was a bit strange to be standing at the side of the road wearing a kilt.
That was it. It was the kilt that done it.
Yeah. And they said, have you called the AA? I said, yes, I have. And they're coming in 45 minutes. Then 5 more giant guys got out the car. I said, have you got a toolkit? I said, yes. So they put their searchlights on, changed the wheel, got their hands dirty, and thanked me. I thanked them, rather, and they drove on their way, and I cancelled the AA. I then wrote to the Chief Constable of Kent, thanking them because they were acting above and beyond their call of duty, because if I'd been there, I'd have said, thank you very much, sir, have a safe journey, and I'd have driven away. I got a nice letter back from the Chief Constable saying that all these officers had been interviewed and that their records were going to be duly noted. And I thought that was absolutely fantastic.
Fantastic indeed. Thanks, Peter, in Surbiton. Asif is in Walthamstow. He has a different perspective. Go ahead, Asif.
Yeah, hello, you're right there, mate.
Yes, I'm great, thanks.
Calling.
Okay, mate, go ahead.
Basically, what it is, no, I don't think the police have helped me, because what it is, I was anti-police. I came out of prison 6 months ago, changed my life around. I've come out, I've got a job, bought a van and everything. My van was parked outside a sweet shop. It got smashed in, vandalised. Windscreen got kicked in, side mirrors, everything. The whole van got smashed in. I called the police for the first time in my whole entire life, and they came. There was cameras outside the shop. I told them, listen, there's cameras outside the shop, get the CCTV. They went in there. I got a letter through the post, through the door, a week later saying, sorry, we couldn't, there was no tape in the CCTV and we couldn't get nothing. And ever since then, that's the last time I phoned the police, and I don't think I will.
That's not their fault, of course. I mean, the cameras didn't belong to them, did they? They belonged to the shop.
I understand that, but at that same shop, because the shop is on my road and the van was parked on my street, this same, whenever there's just a little noise or anything happens, they turn up, they start harassing people, start harassing us young lads. But when something happens, it's like they're not even bothered. They didn't go and pursue the matter, go ask for any witnesses or anything. But when it's the other way around, it's different, because I've been in trouble with the police before many times. I've been in prison, I've came out, I've changed everything up, left my past behind, trying to go work, earn a proper day's work, and then this what happens to me, and then I phoned the police, and they wrote me just a letter saying, sorry, mate, we can't do nothing about it. Simple, that was it.
Well, that's, in a nutshell, the positive calls that we've had, and the positive comments made by me, were all made by white men. And the first time we get someone who's not a white man on the air, he has a different experience. There's a problem here. Kevin is in Finchley. Go ahead, Kevin.
Hi, George.
Hi.
Just before I start, I'm a black man,
okay.
from Jamaican heritage.
Okay.
So born and brought up in London, and I'm of a certain vintage. So I'm 47 years of age, and I drive a lovely black Audi A6.
Do you ever get stopped?
I'm professional. This is the thing. Now, the reason why I've called is because I've been stopped. I've been pulled over rightly for speeding. Now, it happens. Now, I'm trying to get home. I've had a long day's work. I was driving down the A40 into London, and I got pulled over by an unmarked police car. So I thought, oh God, this is it. I'll say I was doing about 70 miles an hour into 50 mile an hour zone. So I thought, that's it. And I have to say this, but this is because I'm of a certain age. I was wearing a shirt and trousers, and I speak relatively well. And I think because I'm a professional, they treated me with the utmost respect. And they actually didn't even do me. They said, look, you got a nice car. Just calm down your driving. If we see you again speeding, we'll do you, but just be on your way. Now, the reason why I say this is because my nephew, who is 16, has had the complete opposite end of the spectrum. He's young, he's black, and he has been traumatized by the Metropolitan Police. They have spoken to him, and he's a young, decent, upstanding young man, but he's 6'4", he's 16, and he can be intimidating, but he's not. He's a big, cuddly giant. And so I would suggest that it is a generational thing. I do feel sorry for young black men. And for me, it's absolutely different because I'm 47, I'm professional, I get away with murder with police. And they'll probably be scared because the minute they hear me and they see me, they know that I'll
probably think you're a QC. Oh, we've lost him. Johnny's in Walthamstow. Let's go there.
Oh, hello.
Hi, Johnny.
Yeah, I'm a black man. I'm 53 years old. I've always had problems with the police, even during the SOS laws. They've always stopped me and searched me, and I've got no convictions at all. And recently, we lived next door to a lady who was a particular racist person. She abused me and my sister. We called the police, and they don't do anything about it. When she called the police and said I made a racial abuse about her, which I didn't, they arrested me and strip searched me and held me for 2 days. And this thing keeps going on. It doesn't stop. Sometimes the police come twice a day and harass us because this lady says that we we've said things and it's not true. You know, and this thing is still going on. It doesn't stop. You know, and I've wrote to them about it. The police complaints to complain about it. They said that I have to write up to the police in Chingford and they have to look into it. And they said that what the police done is right. And it just keeps going on.
Have you complained to the IPCC about this?
Yeah, they pass it on. They said the police have to look into it first. If the police look into it and said if it's not, then they'll pass it on to them. And the police said it's lawful, which is not lawful. You know, I'll contact the local MP about it, and the council, and the councillor, and the council, because my sister, she's trying to move because this lady, she says she's a Nazi and she's proud of it. And we've told the police that. We've even taken conversation about it.
Well, you need to get that on tape. That was the next point I was going to make. Johnny, thanks for that. Andrew's in Redbridge.
Oh, hi, George.
Hi,
Great
Andrew.
to speak to you.
And you?
No, I've just got a very funny story. When I was 17, when I bought my first car, and ashamed as I am to admit it, I didn't have a full license. I only had a provisional license, didn't have any L plates, but I'd literally just bought this car. It was tax insured and everything. I'd only been on the road for about 5 minutes, and it was a local road where you could go quite fast. So I'm speeding down this road about 70 miles an hour. And in those days, I mean, this is many, many years ago, the police used to hide behind some trees. And out of nowhere, this Panda car comes up behind me. I said, oh, my God, my dad is going to go crazy. Because I'd literally only had the car for 5 minutes, stopped the car, and this chap must have been in his 50s or so. And he came up to the window and he said two things. He said, firstly, one of your rear brake lights isn't working, so you need to get that out because it's a bit dangerous and stuff. And secondly, you were going like a rocket. Calm down, drive safely. Got back in his car and drove off.
Well, there you go. That's so long ago. He was in a Panda car. Thanks for that, Andrew. It's 10:45. I'm taking your calls this morning on policing. I want you to tell me if you still have faith in the police after the travel. I'm talking to David Buick about the knock-on effects of what happened in China over the last couple of days. It used to be said that when the United States caught a cold, everyone else sneezed around the world. Nowadays, China is the number one economy in the world, and the same appears to be true because over the last few days and weeks, the Chinese economy looks like it's performing more poorly than people expected. Factory output figures released this week have triggered mass falls in share prices, certainly in Eastern markets. And I'm going to find out now from David Buick, a man who knows from Panmure Gordon & Co., whether the same impact is going to be felt here in Western countries and whether the knock-on from China's economic problems, together with, of course, the uncertainty in Greece, there's now a general election, yet another split in a left-wing party and so on. I'm just wondering if we might be on the threshold of something big, something 2008, 2009 big. David, what do you think about that?
Morning to you, George.
Morning.
I'm not certain that we've got quite the same scenario, but there's no question of any doubt about it that if we look at the very basics, if we've got time just to say from June 2014 to June 2015, the main Chinese stock market index, the composite, up 150%. Now, this is astonishing to me and most onlookers because since that period, the strength and growth of the Chinese economy has gone into reverse.
Mm-hmm.
Going back 4 years, it was nearly 10% GDP, something that we would have dreamt of if we'd had 30% of it.
Yeah.
And it's now scheduled to come in around 7% or slightly under. We think that the Chinese authorities are being economical with the truth.
Oh, really?
And we think that the real growth in China is about 3%. And this has been illustrated by the fact that in the course of the last year, we have seen oil prices come down from about $115 a barrel to 40 and change.
Yeah, US crude is 40 today.
Yeah, and we have seen resource prices, i.e. metal prices, iron ore, copper, silver, gold, cascade downhill. Who are the biggest users of these commodities? China. And the fact that they don't have the demand for them means that these prices have come down dramatically, and therefore we have seen oil shares, mining stocks such as Rio Tinto, BHP Billiton, Kazakh Rio Tinto, Glencore, not only halve in value, George, but in some cases come down by 2/3%. The oil companies haven't, but the mining companies have. But the oil companies have come down by about a third, which is, by any standards, dramatic.
And China devalued unexpectedly and by more than expected.
3% last week. They tried to tell us that that was enough. In point of fact, since the beginning of the year, there is no change, because it had revalued during the period of that until last week by about 4%. So it's more or less flat where it was. What we don't believe is that the Chinese have finished their business, because the biggest problem they have is a social problem, is that they have 8 million people leaving university every year. And these are now highly educated people, and they want work. And if they're going to come into the marketplace, the Chinese authorities do not want a repeat of Tiananmen Square. And therefore, in order to guarantee these people work, you need to have GDP of around 7%. So we'll all be watching very closely for the next few months to see whether this can be delivered, whether it's by massage, for want of a better expression, or fact, remains to be seen.
Well, smoke and mirrors is not a Chinese prerogative, of course. No. It's frequently practiced in your area of work. So we'll see that. We'll look at that with interest. One last point then, David. The markets in the East tumbled. I see on the screen now on Sky that the stock exchange here is also falling. How far is that all going to go?
Well, just to put the thing in perspective, that no country in the world can act on its own in terms of growth. So the trigger points have come from China in the last 2 months since June. And during that period, we have seen the FTSE come off from its high in April of 7,100 down to 6,336, very roughly. I haven't got a screen in front of me, which is a drop of 10.7%. And we've seen enormous gains made on the DAX in Germany and the CAC in France of 20% plus, and they are now down, or they are now just showing a gain of something like 12% on the CAC and about 4.5% on the DAX. Sorry, 6% on the DAX. The US markets have come down significantly from where they were, but they're still, in the case of the Nasdaq, which is the technology market, is still above the Plimsoll line. The Dow is now down about 4.5% since the beginning of the year, and the S&P by about 2.6%.
And what will all this mean for the average
The average person needs to pay attention to this for the following reason, is that it's a barometer of what might be for their pensions and what is going to be for growth and employment. Employment, I don't know what you think, but I think it's the most important thing in the world. And when you see these, I believe and hope, are healthy corrections from a frothy stock market that got ahead of itself. But what I don't want to see is the fact is that things in China are significantly worse than we think they are, and that they will affect growth all the way around the world. As we know, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Janet Yellen, wants to put interest rates up next month. I think she's going to have to wait.
Yeah, that's not going to happen now, no.
And Mark Carney is going to have to do the same in this country.
Yeah, they were thinking that by November they might be able to put rates up, or at least January. I don't think either's going to be met yet.
Personally speaking, I agree with you, but I think to see some interest rates going up somewhere in the world would be not a bad sign, a good sign, providing it was symbolic, like 0.25% to saying, look, we're going to try and wean you off zero interest rates during the course of the next 2-3 years. But as you know, when you have no inflation in the world, which we don't at the moment, you put interest rates up, margins get narrowed, companies stop making profits and they sack people. So we do not need that, and therefore they will be very sensitive, the authorities, about whether they're going to put interest rates or not. Full employment is what everybody has to go for. We're a million miles from it, but the interest rate factor is extremely important. We do not want that implemented at the moment.
David Buick of Panmure, Gordon and Co., thanks very much indeed for your wisdom. Let's return to the calls on the issue of the police and trust. Ben is in Orpington. Go ahead, Ben. Ben, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Go ahead.
You know what's interesting? You had two callers, a 45-year-old black man that spoke, with good etiquette, polite, courteous, professionally, and he found that the police were
nice to him.
Receptive to that. Yeah, absolutely. The guy that called just before that was out of prison, street slang, aggressive demeanour, no please, no thank you. Speaking to the police is no different from speaking to your family members. If you're polite to people, they're going to want to do more for you. It's really, really simple logic. Now, I'm a black person myself. I drive incredibly nice cars. I don't get harassed because I'm law-abiding.
But do you get pulled over in your car?
Yeah, I've been pulled over. There was one evening I got pulled over.
But I never get pulled over. See what I'm saying, Ben?
But the interesting thing is, let's be frank. When we talk about radicalization, there's more probability of a Muslim being radicalized than a Hare Krishna. So when we go back to black people, historically, you are involved in more crime. You are possessing more cannabis.
That's not true. That's just not true. No. I'm stopping you there because none of those things that you said are true. White people use cannabis much more than black people. But black people, if they're found with cannabis, are much more likely to be charged. If charged, then convicted. If convicted, then punished more severely. These are the facts, Ben, and it's important in our line of work to always get the facts right. Now, we got to talk in the second hour about dementia. It's a change of pace, but it's just as important. How hard is it to care for someone with dementia? And do you feel you get the support you need to do so? Well, I'm handcuffed to the police issue. So many people want to talk. I can't get away from it. They've got me in custody. I've got to keep talking about that police story because, frankly, you want to. But we will be talking about dementia. Maybe about 15:15, maybe a little later than that, depending on how this next bit goes. And we'll be talking about Greece, where there's an election and a left-wing party just broke up. Hey, that's a surprise. And in the last hour, I'll be talking about Jeremy Corbyn, about the Labour Party, about the priorities for a new Labour leader, and about Jeremy Corbyn's statement that he's going to make an apology on behalf of the Labour Party over the Iraq war, a matter of some importance to me, maybe also to you. I did ask in the first hour, do you trust the police to have your best interests at heart? I didn't think it would get us all so busy, but it has. And so, well, I'm here to serve the public. And here's Rosie in Islington up next. Go ahead, Rosie.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning to you.
I'd just like to say that I'm pretty torn by the police, especially coming from Islington.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm only 20, so from a generational point of view, I have to say that I've had both experiences with police where they've been very power-hungry and heavy-handed, and I've had some really lovely ones that are genuinely just there to make sure everything's good and calm and everything's going well. But most of the time...
Tell me about your good experiences first.
My good experiences, well, don't judge me for this, but when I was 15 I was arrested with a group of people. And I was arrested by a really nice officer. He explained to me why I was being arrested and everything. It was just for a minor drunken disorderly, but he was very nice. Came to check on me to make sure I was okay because he knew it was my first time being arrested. But the other officers there were very unpolite, very rude to us, and actually the person who arrested one of the people I was with practically body slammed him full on to the floor to rugby tackle him down, to handcuff him. So no need. We were all being very cooperative and very polite. So it's two experiences in one, really.
Well, the soundtrack to this call is appropriate, Rosie. Thanks for that. I got both the good and the bad in that anecdote, so thanks for the call. I mentioned Tottenham earlier. Tijan is on the line from there.
Hi, George.
Hi.
How are you doing? I just want to say that my experience actually differs vastly from a lot of the callers that you've had previously.
Yeah.
I'm a black male from the Tottenham area, and during one lunch, I've had different experiences, but all the way through my upbringing, I've kind of been subjected to stop and search for no apparent reason. And in all of the cases, there's nothing to find on me, and I can walk away. And you know, your last caller was talking about street slang and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I can talk in that dialect, but I also have an English literature degree. So for me, I think that's no relevance. I think a lot of the judgment is based on physical appearance.
Well, a lot of white kids talk in street slang.
Exactly.
We can't have people being policed differently, either according to the colour of their skin or the colour of their collar.
Exactly. And effectively, you know, the experience I had, the kind of worst experience I've had was fairly recently. I was on a lunch break from work, coming through the tube station, and a sniffer dog was there. Maybe they had them routinely set up for drug searches. I don't know. Maybe it was for other more threatening things, maybe explosives. I don't know. But as I was walking through the tube station, the dog reacted with a little bark and sat down. So I was then confronted by an officer, sort of hand on the shoulder. Excuse me, sir, you know, and I had nothing to fear, so I had no reason to worry. I was completely cooperative, at which point the police and the two officers came to assist them and take me aside to a separate room. Now, what I found really offensive about this is both of them grabbed me by either arm and sort of frog-marched me towards this office, at which point I turned to them and said, look, guys, there's no need to be so physical. I'm perfectly willing to cooperate. You know, I've got no issues, so I'm perfectly willing to cooperate. But please don't make me look like a criminal in front of a public space when I've done nothing. Effectively, your dog has kind of reacted, so fine. You know, I'm sure these things aren't always 100% foolproof, so let's just treat me like a normal civilian. I'll come and cooperate. At which point the officers were even more physical, grabbing me, and, you know, and I kind of reacted slightly defensively by sort of withdrawing my arm and sort of saying, guys, let go. At which point it turned into a full fracas. And, you know, more officers joined the scene. They were trying to put me to the floor. And I think initially my reaction was a defensive one. You know, I was actually scared of the idea of having a load of full adult males on top of me while, you know, I'm on the floor. So I was kind of just trying to hold back and say, look, I'm perfectly willing to cooperate, guys, please. But the whole situation escalated out of control, and it kind of ended up with me and about 6 or 7 officers directly on top of me, my leg bent back in a stretched position, my head bent back, you know, handcuffs put onto me, and this is in a public space where everyone's looking at me and naturally assuming that if I've got this many officers on top of me being so physical that I must be some sort of violent criminal threat, you know, and it was just humiliating. And by the time they got me in the office and checked and there was nothing to charge me with. There was no need for any of that whole procedure, and it just kind of it's kind of the pinnacle of all my experiences with the police, which have pretty much been negative experiences. And I would never find myself, I think no matter how bad a situation is, I don't feel I'm in a position where I could trust the police, where I would call a police officer to aid me in any situation. You know, it's given me a complete negative relationship.
That's a very deeply shocking and indeed depressing experience. What happened next? Did they apologise to you? Did you make a complaint against them?
To be honest, about 6 of the 7 officers were complete thugs. One officer kind of calmed the whole situation down because I was on the verge of going into a complete panic attack. It could have been a lot worse, but luckily one of the officers calmed everything down, got everyone off of me. I then proceeded to make a complaint, but if you know anything about the IPCC, the Complaints Commission, it's such a long-winded process, and I believe this is how a lot of police get away with murder, effectively, because it's such a long paper trail, and, you know, when you're just a hard-working young male trying to earn
but you're an English language and literature graduate. You can do it, and you should do it. You should have done it.
Yeah, and I often feel guilty, and I've still got paperwork sitting at home, but this incident took place quite a while back, and I kind of feel like the moment's gone. But it was all on video camera, and I think I just got caught up with the day-to-day grind of just trying to get through life and pay bills, etc. And I just got worn down with the monotony and all the paperwork. And I did have a police officer come and visit me. I did try and pursue it, but I kind of got grinded down by the whole procedure, and they got away with it. And if you look back, there is a history of cases that have just kind of subsided because the length of time that it takes to deal with the process. And by then, if you're not striking while the iron's hot, a lot of evidence gets forgotten about, a lot of things go to the side, and people get away with, you know, actually not enforcing the law properly and not carrying out their work properly, you know?
Well, it's a very, very powerful call. You didn't make the complaint, but you've spoken to the country now eloquently and powerfully and made a really powerful point. But Martin, maybe he said this before he heard you, doesn't think that being black or white has anything to do with it. Let's hear if he still thinks that. Martin in Wickford in Essex. Go on, Martin.
Hello, the name's Mark. I didn't actually say that, to be honest, George. I'm a fan of yours.
Okay.
But that's not what I said. What I actually said was I disagreed with some fellow black callers earlier who said that because they spoke eloquently, particularly one that said he got away with murder.
Yeah.
I don't believe that to be the case. And in fact, to follow that last comment from the young man in Tottenham, I think he's exactly right. I'm of a certain age. I'm 48. I believe that, you know, I've been on the wrong side of the law a few times in my life. I've met up with individuals who have treated me like rubbish, and I've met up with individuals that have treated me with respect. I've been stopped and searched in my car. I wouldn't say that, you know, I've got a beautiful car, but I've got a decent car. I think I speak reasonably well, but what I disagreed with was the fact that somebody could come on here and say, oh, because I speak eloquently and because I speak well, I get away with murder. I totally disagree with that. In fact,
I agree with you in that case, and I'm sure that's not the case, and if it is the case, it oughtn't to be the case. We can't have discriminatory policing either on the basis of colour or education or accent. We can't have that. We have to have equal policing, whatever your colour and whatever the colour of your collar. Martin, thanks for setting me right on that. After the travel, I'm going to try and change the pace and explore the issue of dementia. Researchers this morning report we're no longer, apparently, facing an epidemic when it comes to dealing with people who suffer from dementia, which is a relief. But I want to know if you are involved in that. I want to know how hard it is for you to care for someone with dementia. I'm going to be talking about the Labour Party in the last hour. There seems to be some development. Andy Burnham is concerned that of the 610,000 people currently, indeed many of them already, having voted in the Labour leadership election, that, well, maybe they're being infiltrated by Conservatives. Well, I heard a band playing somewhere, believe it if you like, but maybe there's something in it. We'll hear from Theo Usherwood, our political editor, in the course of that discussion. I've said all along, I say it again now, Jeremy Corbyn's going to win the Labour leadership, win it big, unless he's cheated. Is this the beginning of the cheating? I want to start off, though, talking about dementia. There's good news and there's bad news. In the newspapers this morning, health editors are saying that dementia will not be the epidemic it was feared. Academics have produced a new report which say that the proportion of people with dementia and the numbers of new cases being diagnosed are from the 1980s and are now out of date. They say that 4 out of the 5 people that they were studying showed no increase in the prevalence of dementia. The figures are still, however, really bad. 22% fewer people aged over 65 with dementia in 2011 than had been predicted in 1990. That's all very good. But of course, the problem is still big and still growing. It's just not the epidemic that was feared. And of course, the amount of support, help that people get is not nearly good enough, according to those caring for people with dementia and those involved in the field. The Alzheimer's Society show that only 5% of research funding between 1990 and 2012 was spent on prevention, 11% on diagnosis, 20% on care and support, and by far the most, 65% on research on causes, cures and treatment. Well, they haven't come up with a cure, they haven't really even come up with a treatment. The support to the families looking after people with dementia is a source of much, much criticism. And John in Enfield is one of those people. Let's hear from him. John, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, George. Always listen to you. Background, 35 years on the Met, 82 years old. My wife had dementia for the last 8 years of her life.
Okay.
I was her sole carer. She had the full package. And so I was her total carer. But I got day care at the local psychiatric hospital. The local authority couldn't handle her. And I also got respite occasionally, gave me a break at the local psychiatric hospital and sometimes at the local authority.
Yeah.
Other than that, I looked after her absolutely full time. We had a great deal of luck when she lost her mobility completely. A guy moved into our flats from Nigeria called Benji, and he turned out to be a trained carer. So he did a job for me as well. So it all worked out terribly, terribly well.
When did your wife's dementia begin? And when did you first notice it, John?
Well,
I'm asking because I've not actually known anyone with dementia.
In actual fact, the strange thing was, I didn't notice it. Everybody else noticed it, and it came to light when her doctor noticed it because she failed to keep an appointment, and when the flower man told me she hadn't paid for her flowers and owed some money to the hairdresser. But I didn't notice it. Then, of course, I did notice it very much so.
What age was she then, John?
Let me see. My wife died at the age of 81. She had it for 8 years.
Okay, so she was already into her 70s.
Oh, yeah, she was into her 70s.
And so you changed, your life changed. You were a loving husband, and then you were a carer.
Absolutely.
Tell us about that.
Well, she had the full package. You had to do absolutely everything for her. You had to feed her, brush her teeth. She'd go off wandering, which was a great worry. You'd be looking for her. It was...
Did she continue to know who you were and all that?
Sometimes she didn't. But when I took her to bed, we always had a caring moment because I'd put her to bed after wrestling with her, and I'd get her to bed, and I'd always say to her, this is all a bit smokesy. I said, Brenda, you're my lovely Brenda. I love you. And she'd say to me, oh, do you really? And I'd say, yeah. And she'd pat my cheek and say, good. And that was sort of every night. But other than that, sometimes she did know me, sometimes she didn't. She had mood changes. Mood changes. They all have mood changes.
Yeah.
They're sometimes very benign. Other times very aggressive. The full package.
Now, you were yourself not a spring chicken when you were shouldering this burden. How do you feel the system supported you in this?
Well, the system supported me on the basis that I was equal to the task.
Yeah. Everyone concerned was very lucky that you clearly were equal to the task. You've got all your marbles. You're a former police officer. You sound quite spry. That's, of course, not the case in every family where this happens.
This is very much the case. And of course, if it's the other way around, if the husband's got dementia and the wife is likely to be smaller and weaker, that becomes far tougher.
Yeah, because lumping the husband around in and out of bathrooms and so on.
I had a routine going. I'd get her out of bed, support her, quite frankly, put her on the lavatory, then I'd wash her all over. She couldn't get in the bath or anything like that, but it worked out terribly well. And I refused, I declined to have, what do they call them, carers coming in. But when eventually they did come in for a couple of weeks, I could do without them. And then this guy rolled up from Nigeria, so everything worked out terribly well.
Now, I mean, now that it's all over, your wife has passed.
Yeah.
You look back on it now. I mean, has it a huge salience in your life? Do you remember that very much more than you remember the good times? I mean, how has it affected your memory of your marriage and your good wife?
Oh, I had the most marvellous wife, and I I think all I say is I didn't get married until quite late. I got married at 54. And but I always think it was how marvellous it was that I was able to be with her when this came up. I really do. I look on it as quite a success story.
It definitely is a success story, a very moving one.
Yeah, it was good. So
a very, very moving one. And what's life like for you now, John?
Absolutely great.
What are you doing with yourself? You got an allotment? You following the horses or what?
No. I'm out every day. I meet people every day. I'm in the library, ITing. I'm just in a few organisations, military associations, all that sort of stuff. George, there aren't enough hours in the day. I get up as early as I can.
Crikey.
To get through the day.
If I ever get dementia, John, I hope you can look after me. Thanks very much for a simply wonderful call. Are you a husband or a wife of someone with dementia? Have you cared for someone with dementia? What's the average day like when you're caring for someone who is suffering this affliction? I want to hear from you because this is a subject which, whilst not the epidemic, that's the good news, that was feared, I actually know almost nothing about this subject. I have never known anyone with dementia. I have not yet got dementia, despite some of the vicious tweets I've been receiving in the last few minutes. But I am interested in it because so many people have had to go into that good night. And I'm interested in the dynamic inside the house of the family members involved in how they respond to it. I'm trying to shine a light in a corner that's very important because a lot of people live in that corner. It's not anything that I have yet encountered myself. It's the corner in which those with dementia live and those who live with them live. But first, there's some breaking news in the Labour leadership contest. I don't actually know exactly what it is, but I see Andy Burnham looking purposefully on a breaking news story. So who else to turn to but the very wise young man, Theo Usherwood, the LBC political editor. Theo.
Yes, good morning, George. Now, until now, Yvette Cooper, Andy Burnham and Liz Kendall have said that they're happy with the way that the Labour leadership race is being run, and that, of course, there have been concerns in the mainstream media about the fact that left-wing union members, former Labour members, are coming back to the party to vote in this election and vote for Jeremy Corbyn. And then on the other hand, there have also been fears that Tory councillors, Tory party members are signing up to vote for Jeremy Corbyn because they see that if Jeremy Corbyn wins, they believe that if Jeremy Corbyn wins, that would sign Labour to electoral oblivion. Now, as I said, Liz Kendall, Yvette Cooper and Andy Burnham have all remained very tight-lipped about this. They've said that they're happy with the way the process is being run. They don't have any concerns right up until now, because Andy Burnham has come out and he has written a letter, or his campaign chief, Michael Duggar, has written a letter to Labour Party HQ asking for a meeting of all the candidates and their teams next week to discuss the way the campaign, to discuss the way the Labour leadership race is being run. In that letter, Mr. Duggar says there has been extensive media coverage in recent days regarding the procedural elements of the leadership elections. We warmly welcome the fact that the process has been opened up, thus enabling so many rank-and-file Labour supporters to have a say in the future of our party. There do, however, remain concerns about potential Tory infiltration on a large scale, with a Conservative MP, Conservative media commentators and Conservative councillors all having been rejected. This suggests the 121,000 registered supporters could include several thousand Tory infiltrators, as well as supporters of other parties seeking to have a vote in the election. Now, it's interesting to see that they're pinning their concerns on Tories infiltrating the race, not on Corbynistas infiltrating the race. And, of course, there are some who might see this intervention by Andy Burnham's team as a sign of desperation because, of course, Jeremy Corbyn, if you believe the polls, and of course the polls can be wrong, is running away with the race.
The bookies are not normally wrong, and Paddy Power at least is paying out on Jeremy Corbyn, which seems to suggest, as you say, that he's running away with it. I'm more interested in where this is coming from than what it is that they are saying, because it's clearly absurd that in an electorate of 610,000, right-leaning newspaper columnists can make a significant difference to the outcome. Or Tory councillors. There are not that many Tory councillors, and most of them will not have joined the Labour Party in the last few weeks. But the fact that it's coming from Andy Burnham is a surprise. He's been attacked by others that are fighting him and others that are supporting them as a flip-flopper. One day he's pro-Corbyn, pledging to serve under him, praising him for energising the contest and so on, and yet now it's him that's raising a red flag, not the traditional red flag, but a red flag of danger.
Yes, the difficulty that Andy Burnham has is that he doesn't want to be rude about those who are voting for Jeremy Corbyn. He doesn't want to say that they're unreasonable or that they don't have the party's best interests at heart, because of course he wants to be their second preference. The way the system is set up is that you can vote for Jeremy Corbyn, fine, as your first preference, but then your second preference, he wants to be their second preference choice rather than Yvette Cooper. But the problem that Andy Burnham finds himself in, of course, is that on the way the polls stand at the moment is that Jeremy Corbyn's going to win outright with 51% of the vote.
So his second preferences will never be important, yeah?
Will never be important. So what he needs to do is he needs to, on the one hand, try and rein in what's happening at the moment in terms of the way that the contest is seemingly or appears to be running away from him, but at the same time, keep those people who have come back to the party voting for Jeremy Corbyn on his side, so they pick him as their second choice candidate. And that's the difficulty that he's facing.
There's also the issue of timing. I mean, the ballot papers are almost all out, and many of them will already be back. We discussed it, I think, yesterday or the day before. There's a very large number of people vote immediately. Then there's a plateau, and then a significant number of people vote towards the end. That's how these things work. There's holidays, school holidays are on at the moment, and so on. But especially those who joined specifically to vote in this contest, you would have thought that most of them would already have cast their vote.
Well, it's very difficult to tell exactly how many people have voted already and how many people are left to vote. I was speaking to somebody close to Yvette Cooper, and they see this weekend coming, this Saturday and Sunday coming, as crucial, because what they believe is that the ballot papers came through the letterbox on Monday, Tuesday, and then they've remained on the kitchen table all week, and that this weekend people will sit down when they have a moment, when the kids are busy, sit down and cast their votes after work, without the kind of flurry of work and daily life, bogging them down, and make their choice. And they're pinning their hopes on this weekend as being a big voting weekend, and then there'll be a flurry of ballot papers being returned early next week. Now, whether that's true, whether it actually happens like that, remains to be seen. But you're quite right to say that the timing is crucial, and that's why we've seen so much activity from all four campaigns this week, and particularly towards the end of this week. Andy Burnham is simply calling for a meeting of all of the candidates, but one has to wonder what the real motivation is. What happens when that meeting transpires next week, if it goes ahead, of course, next week? Is he going to sit in that meeting with his campaign team and say, actually, we need this whole race to be called off? That's going to be the crucial question.
Indeed, that would be very big news indeed. I won't be here to talk to you then about it, but I'm sure you will be talking about it. Thanks for that, Theo Usherwood, our political editor. I'm talking for the remainder of this hour, mainly, I hope, about dementia. I'm asking how hard it is. Shirley in Battersea has been very patient with me whilst I discussed that breaking news, but she's on the air now. Shirley, thanks for this.
Good morning, George.
Good morning.
To live with somebody with dementia is a life-changing thing. It's nothing you forget. Some people can adapt to things more, but I can tell you it's horrific, and there's none so blind as those who don't want to see. My husband was doing really strange things, and I just thought he was just being bolshy.
Tell me some of them.
Some going around second-hand shops and bringing home things saying people had given him them. He wasn't. He was buying them. Ridiculous items. When he was trying to do the garden and things, he was leaving forks and spades around and cutting round them, and rakes, anything that was dangerous. You know, that he was well aware of when he was in his right mind. But it was a long time coming. He had a problem with his carotid artery, but it wasn't a serious problem, and he was being treated at King's College for that.
Mm-hmm.
And they done all the tests, and then we went up there one day, and we was just told by the consultant that it was all fine, and he said, I can't deal with this anymore. And he just turned to my husband, and my husband looked at him and said, well, what? So I said, well, what avenue are we going down? Psychiatric unit.
Mm.
And things from there just deteriorated.
And how far did they deteriorate? Your husband's still alive?
Yes, he is.
How far has he deteriorated?
Very badly. He doesn't walk now. He talks very little. He can't feed himself. He's double incontinent. And he mixes us up in the family.
Does he remember you?
He does, yeah. Luckily.
So you're the one constant?
Yes.
Constant as the Northern Star. And how often do you see him, Shirley?
I go nearly every other day, or at least every third day, but it's usually every other day. I can't just let go, George. I can't just put him into care and think that's it.
No.
That's the man I married, and I do care, and I want to see that he's being cared for, because I feel I've let him down by putting him into care. But he's a 6-foot man, weighs 14 stone. I could never have managed him in our house.
No. You haven't let him down at all. Very, very far from it.
But it affects your family as well, and it affects your friends, because there was lots of upset before he went in, because he was accusing my friends of stealing from us when he couldn't find things.
Yeah.
I've even had the police knock at the door while I've been out shopping to say they've come back. My husband's phoned them to say something was missing, one of his trophy things. It wasn't missing, he'd found it. So he phoned it, he had the common sense then, this is going back a few years, to phone back and say he'd found it. But they came just to make sure everything was all right. And once I explained that he had to, I couldn't have had 3 more lovely policemen at my door.
Tell me, what quality of life does your husband have now? What's his daily routine in the hospital?
Nothing, really, because he's not interested. He's not... he goes far away. He's happy sometimes. Sometimes he's crying. It's not living, it's existing.
What age is he now, Shirley?
Pardon?
What age is he now?
He's 73.
So this is basically 4 years after the diagnosis. And how fast was the decline to 69? I mean, when did you first start noticing signs before 69 and the diagnosis?
I didn't know it was dementia. I thought it was the oxygen cut off, you know.
I see, from the other condition.
He was losing his journeys as well. When we was out travelling, he'd forget where he was, and I'd take over driving. But it's been coming on, they reckon, for a good 8-9 years.
Okay. It's a very powerful call, Shirley, and very moving. And your stand, your nobility, your integrity shone through it. And so I would hate you ever to think that you in any way let him down. That we should all have a good wife like you. I wish on everyone. Well, Greece is back in the news. It's scarcely been out of it, actually, all of this year. But it's back in the news for 2 reasons. First of all, the Prime Minister has resigned and seeks new elections, though there are some moves amongst opposition parties to form a new government and avoid these elections. And the second reason is that the Syriza party, the left-wing anti-austerity party that came to power from nowhere, apparently, earlier this year, has now split, with the people who think that the Prime Minister has sold out by signing up to bailout deals with the lenders in basically defiance of the electoral platform on which they had stood and the mandate which they think they had received, not just in the electoral victory for Syriza, but the referendum which they held to arm them as they went into crucial negotiations with the lenders and with the banks and European Union institutions that have piloted through the bailout. One man who, I imagine, has been unexpectedly busy on politics in the course of this year, of course he's very busy in any case, is Kevin Featherstone. He's the Professor of Contemporary Greek Studies, Professor of European Politics, and Director of the Hellenic Observatory. And I welcome him onto the show. Professor Kevin, thanks for joining us. It has, I suppose, been unexpectedly busy for you this year. Did you expect contemporary Greek politics to have the centre stage that it has had?
No, you're right, George, that it's something which is developed almost out of proportion. I mean, when we think of the size of the Greek economy in relation to the EU, then it's the same kind of relationship as the state of Vermont has with the rest of the European Union, with the United States, rather. So we're talking about a very small state, but one which has received attention from Washington, Beijing, Europe, etc., because of the debt crisis.
Indeed. Now, one thought when Syriza was elected that we were in for a period of perhaps lengthy confrontation between the Greek government and the lenders, but that didn't last long because the Prime Minister climbed down and is now stepping down. How do you see all that?
Well, I guess it's you either see it as a choice which he made according to national interest and public opinion polls which show overwhelming Greek support for staying in the euro, or you see it as the outcome of an election campaign last January when he was promising the impossible. That is, he was saying that Greece could end austerity, no more bailouts, no more imposition of foreign policies on Greece, but stay in the euro. Greece could have its cake and eat it at the same time, and it took perhaps 9 months for people to realize this was an impossible combination.
And his party has now split, the left of the party forming something called a Popular Unity. Do you think they will prosper, or are we going to see the left disintegrate further?
I think it's not as pessimistic for the left as you might suggest. I think what we're going to see is a reformation of Syriza and the empowerment of its leader, Alexis Tsipras. That I think what he's done by calling the election is precisely to marginalise those MPs, the 29 MPs, that rebelled against his party line.
That'll only happen, of course, if they do miserably at the polls and he does well. Is that your anticipation?
Yes. If you were betting, you would expect something like that on the basis that he personally remains, the Prime Minister, remains personally very popular. And Lafazanis and the left-wing rebels within his party have a lesser popularity and lesser profile. So in the heat of the election campaign, it's very, very difficult for a small splinter party to maintain its position.
Now, the traditional parties, you might argue, the parties that put Greece in this pickle in the first place, they're going to be fighting the election too. The former mainstream Labour Party, PASOK, was almost destroyed in the January election. Is it going to make any kind of comeback, or is it gone for good?
Well, I think the PASOK party is a dead parrot, as it were, in Monty Python terms. What may be emerging is an alternative centre-left party called the River, and that is an alternative. But I think by calling the election at this stage, and the assumption is that it's called the election now because this is before the new austerity measures will be applied. So by calling the election now and backing the bailout deal, I think the Prime Minister has the opportunity of straddling a broad swathe of the left part of the political spectrum, because what can the other left-wing parties say? The moderate left-wing parties say that they wish to stay in the euro. Alexis Tsipras has delivered that. So I think the public opinion is likely to feel that the Prime Minister, Alexis Tsipras, fought a hard battle against Europe. Okay, largely failed, but he fought harder than the rest.
But largely failed is the point, though, isn't it, Kevin, Professor? Because, in fact, he emerged with a worse deal than was on offer previously, no?
This is absolutely true, and the opposition can claim that. But we saw in the referendum campaign that there is a lot of support for the Syriza position. Yes, you're right, George, that today Greece is in a worse position than it was last December, both economically but also in terms of its status and relations within the European Union. But what is the alternative to Tsipras now? You either take a kind of right-wing approach to back more neoliberal policies, or the rest of the political space from the centre to the left seems to be straddled by the Prime Minister.
When do you expect polling to be?
September the 20th. So it's quite soon. But as you mentioned in your lead-in, which was a very accurate summary, at the moment, the other political parties in Parliament are considering whether an alternative government is possible. Mm-hmm. That's not fanciful, because it is actually provided by the Constitution. The Greek Constitution has obstacles in place of an election called within the same year as the previous election.
Yeah. Professor Kevin Featherstone, thank you very much indeed for that elucidation of the situation in Greece. I'm going to be talking in my last hour here on LBC this week about Labour, about the Andy Burnham development, about Jeremy Corbyn's promise of an apology. Sorry has been the hardest word for Labour to say over Iraq. I could tell you a thing or two about that. Sorry does seem to be the hardest word for Labour on the Iraq war. Nobody has apologised. Tony Blair continues to insist that he was right, even as evidence mounts that not only was what he did a crime, it was the mother of all blunders. Ed Miliband shifted the paradigm a little by acknowledging that the Iraq war had been wrong, but he didn't say sorry. And the people who'd done the wrong continued to walk, prowl, creep about the corridors of power. And that's the problem. That's why Jeremy Corbyn is right. He's right to say that if Labour is to turn the page on the Iraq war, and it's not just the war, and it's not just about Iraq, it's about truth, it's about integrity, it's about confidence and credibility of our political system and of Labour's place within it. It's not just the nuts and bolts of the war. It's not about whether the war should have been fought this way or that way. It's about Labour turning a page on the darkest period of its entire history. Because, you see, if it was wrong, it's not wrong like getting the public sector borrowing requirement wrong. It's not wrong like setting the wrong rate of VAT on shoes or this or that. It's not wrong like standing on someone's toes and just saying sorry. It's wrong in as profound a way as it's possible to be wrong. It's being wrong as in 1 million people died because you were wrong. 1 million people. Imagine them piled up, one on top of each other, in Trafalgar Square. Imagine how tall 1 million dead people would look. Imagine a pile of dead people higher than Nelson's column. Much, much higher. That's how wrong it was. It's wrong as in nobody trusts you anymore. It's wrong as in nobody believes political leaders anymore, even when they're telling the truth. It's wrong as in millions of people thinking that the political system is broken, is bankrupted. That's how wrong it is. And it hasn't been apologised for. The people who did the wrong continued to pop up. Alastair Campbell was fundraising for Ed Miliband, the man who said the war was wrong. He was cheering and the star turn at Labour election rallies, even though he and Tony Blair were the two people most responsible for the wrong. Jack Straw and many others continued to pad around at Westminster as if nothing had happened. Whereas I was expelled from the Labour Party for bringing it into disrepute. People ask me all the time, all day, on Twitter, every hour, will I be going back to the Labour Party if Jeremy Corbyn wins? Well, it's really not a question of that. I never left the Labour Party. I was expelled by the Labour Party wrongly, unjustly, and that will have to be rescinded. That's the real question. When will Labour revoke, rescind, withdraw their expulsion of me and come clean that we were right and they were wrong and they are sorry? That's what's needed. And we'll see if it's going to happen. Should Jeremy Corbyn say sorry on behalf of Labour as its leader? He definitely should. I think he definitely will. And I hope that that is the beginning of a page being turned. But there are many, many other priorities that are going to be necessary for him. The first of them is presaged by the news that I talked to Theo Usherwood about just a little while ago, which is that there are people who are still at work trying to somehow invalidate, somehow delegitimize the great victory that Jeremy Corbyn is, I believe, certainly poised to win. They want to leave open the question that maybe it was won because jokers on the Conservative Party right decided to make bogus applications as supporters of the Labour Party. Maybe one did, maybe 10 did, maybe 110 did. But there's 610,000 people voting in this contest. The Labour Party has tripled in size since May, since the general election. Tripled. In 164,000 people joined in just one day, the last day that they could, in order to qualify. So what's happening is a vast wave of people who have a hope that Labour can now be different, can now be a Labour Party, can stand up for real Labour values, have joined, or in many, many cases, rejoined. Tony Blair lost a half of the membership of the Labour Party. I was expelled, but the vast majority of them left. And mainly they left over the Iraq War. So my question to you is, what should the next Labour leader's first priority be? What should the next Labour leader's priorities be? I'm clear about it. He should apologise for Iraq. He should make clear that the Labour Party cannot be dictated to by a coterie of Blairites who happen to have the initials MP after their name, but would never have been MPs if they didn't have the name Labour in front of it, that they would never have been elected as MPs. They could never be elected as Labour MPs unless they were Labour, unless the party's name was attached to them. I have seen generations of these people who imagine that there's something special about them, and there isn't. I was elected twice to Parliament as an ex-Labour MP. The people on the Blairite wing of the Labour Party couldn't get elected to a parish council unless they were Labour. As some of them may be tempted to try and find out, but I caution them against it. There's no space for an SDP-type breakaway. But that might not stop some of them from trying to find it. But there are many other priorities. Labour has to emerge as a serious opponent of the austerity being pushed through by George Osborne and David Cameron, the richest cabinet in Britain's political history, even richer than Sir Alec Douglas Hume's of 1963, which was widely caricatured as a cabinet of the Grousemoors. Well, our cabinet today is richer than any cabinet there has ever been in British history, and we are not all in it together. And Labour has to capture the majority who know that, who feel that they are being made to pay the price of crimes and mistakes that were not their fault in the first place. Labour has to be economically competent. It has to lay some ghosts. And here's one suggestion from me. I give them for nothing. I need nothing in return for this. They should rebrand the paper. They should rebrand the party, rather. Labour, the party of work. Not the party of unemployment, not the party of benefits, not the party of idleness. Labour, the party of work. Never mind One Nation Labour, never mind New Labour. Labour, the party of work. And it should make a commitment that every person in the next term of Labour government will be expected to work unless they actually are incapable of work. Every person will be expected to work, and every person will be found a place to work. That there's no possibility in the 21st century of deliberate idleness and of the taxpayer picking up the price. There's one suggestion for nothing. Labour, the party of work. What do you think the priority for Jeremy Corbyn should be, or the next Labour leader, to be precise, because I don't know that Jeremy Corbyn has won this election, but I'm absolutely sure that he has. What should the next Labour leader's first priority be? Jeff's on the line in Dartford. Go on, Jeff, fire away.
Hi, George.
Hi.
Firstly, I'm hoping very much that Jeremy Corbyn gets the Labour leadership. And my main reasons are this. As soon as he gets in, I'm hoping that he'll rally round and bring in the support that has been falling away through disillusionment. We've been totally disillusioned. I have always been a Labour member. My father was a Labour member. My whole family have been Labour members for a very, very long time. And it seems to me that the other three at this moment, they're not listening to what we're interested in, so they seem to be having their own ideas about what we want. We're actually acknowledging now. I see an awful lot of people that, yes, they may have gone off to other parties because they were disillusioned with Labour Party at this present moment. Now they're seeing something that invites them back in. This is what they've been waiting for, and they are moving towards us again.
Great, Jeff. Great call. Thanks for that. Tony in Woodford, go on.
Hi, Mr. Galloway.
Hello, sir.
Why is this, that the Labour Party should go back to their founding principles, the reason that they were formed in the first place. They've lost the way since New Labour. They became unelectable with Ed Miliband, and I feel now that Jeremy Corbyn, is a breath of fresh air, and I think that the Labour Party will be electable because of Mr. Corbyn, people are starting to, join the Labour Party, and I feel there should be a much more fairer distribution of wealth. And I think the Labour Party are the only party that can do it, Mr. Galloway.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate the call. Pete in Poplar. Go ahead, Pete.
Hello, George. Very good to speak to you, mate.
And you.
I think this is I don't think people realise how big this is. I mean, this is a bit like preaching to the converted for yourself. But Mr. Corbyn, Jeremy Corbyn, stands out from every other Labour leader in the last 30 years because he's not in anybody's pockets. He's not in the pockets of the so-called corporatocracy, a.k.a. the people or the shareholders that really own all the assets, that pull all the strings in the world. He's not on their side. He's on the side of the people in this country, so I'm going to support him fully.
Great call. Pete in Poplar. Yvonne is in Islington. Let's hear from her.
Yeah, I think with all the slander that's been going on with Jeremy Corbyn and Liz Kendall coming out and saying that she doesn't like the slander, they started slandering him first, and he hasn't ever responded to that. I think there's
No, he's been very dignified, actually, in the face of really utterly venomous media campaign, which has been fueled, of course, by members of his own party.
Yeah, and now they're coming out saying they're getting things on Facebook. What did they expect when they went and slandered him? Secondly, I think that his first policy talking about apologising is very good. And I said it on this programme, not your programme, but I've said it before. We can only move forward if we apologise and look at where we went wrong and move forward from there. And I did try to explain this to Ian Collins, but it was quite pusillanimous to me, actually, dumbing down everything I was saying, because I think Jeremy Corbyn would be an extremely good listener, more jaw, less war, and that's what we need. Someone that's going to listen and hear the people rather than just listen and not hear the people.
OK, Yvonne, thanks. Pip is on the line in Waltham Cross. Go ahead, Pip.
Hiya, George. If I could have a wish list, the first thing I'd like him to do is sort of tackle this bizarre culture we've got where big companies, big super rich companies, expect the taxpayer to top up wages. I mean, this is a new thing and it's completely wrong. And the second thing is to deal somehow with the housing thing where people who buy to let are able to, because of the housing benefit, charge really obscene amounts of money. It doesn't help the housing market. So there's two really simple things that absolutely impact on just most of us, the ordinary bods who have to, work for a living, really. So two practical things, and that would help me, help a lot of people.
Thanks, Pip. That's your priorities. Let's hear from Angus in Suffolk.
Hi, George. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good to hear from you. Go on.
I wanted to say that I think that the next leader of the Labour Party, whoever it is, and hopefully it's Jeremy Corbyn, that they have to make it their priority to dispel the lie surrounding Keynesian economics and that our economic model doesn't function as well as the austerity tactics taken by the neoliberals and the Conservatives and the Lib Dems and even Ed Miliband's Labour Party. I think it's an absolute priority.
It's like an embarrassing relative now, the Ed Miliband Labour Party, don't you think? It's not going to be up there in the panoply of heroes.
No, definitely not. It's just
because it was neither one thing nor the other, Angus.
No, exactly. It had no identity.
Had a narrative which he frequently forgot, and which in any case didn't mean anything to real people. I mean, Corbyn's storming because he talks human.
Yeah, exactly. He's completely relatable. He feels like he really believes what he says. And that's what makes him stand out from Cooper and Burnham and definitely Kendall, who just feel like people who are kind of these empty shells.
Well, I think Kendall's the second best, I must say. Burnham and Cooper are desiccated calculating machines. In the case of Burnham, a pretty shameless one, flip-flopping from one side to the other on a daily basis. Kendall, whose politics are the worst from my point of view, farthest away from mine, actually does speak human.
Yeah, no, I think actually I would agree with that. That Kendall she does seem to have belief in what she says.
Yeah, and she's stuck in there when one might have expected that she would have dropped out because she's going to get a very low vote.
exactly. I suppose, yeah, she stands up, for what she believes.
Yeah,
and
she's quite good. She's quite a good talker. I'd never met her before, or seen her, or heard her, but I've been quite impressed on a personal level, if not political one, by how she's done. Thanks for the call, Angus. Let's hear from Nick in Peterborough. Go ahead, Nick.
Hello, George. Well, if he does win, which I hope he does, it's Jeremy Corbyn, although I don't think his policies are all infallible, I think his first priority is to restore some of the Labour Party internal democracy that has been eroded over the last 20, 25 years.
Yeah, it's unrecognisable. I mean, I was a Labour Party organiser. I joined the Labour Party when I was 14. I was a full-time organiser. I was the youngest chairman of the Labour Party in Scotland ever. And then, in those days, the Labour Party had a democratic structure, but it has no more.
Yes, and I think I just wonder if all these people who are saying that, all these candidates, particularly in the Parliamentary Labour Party, who are saying in the Corbyn victory will make Labour electable, are they going to put their own house in order if he does win and seek reselection themselves in their constituencies? Because presumably, if they think Labour's going to be consigned to oblivion because of Corbyn, they've got no future in the party.
What a very good point. What a very good point, Nick, in Peterborough. Lorraine is in Charlton. Let's hear from her.
Hello, George. Lovely to speak to you. I've heard you speak at many meetings and rallies, and I agree with most of what you say.
Thank you.
I left the Labour Party over 30 years ago because the leaders were going too right-wing, and I was always told, don't leave the party because of the leader, but they got worse and worse, and Tony Blair was the finish of it. I left before Tony Blair, by the way. Mm-hmm. But if Jeremy Corbyn gets in, I will definitely go back. And he's a breath of fresh air. And he says, it tells it how it is, not like you say, these machines. Yeah. He's brilliant. I've supported him for a long time as well.
Excellent, Lorraine. Lovely call. Chris is in Aldershot. Let's hear from him.
Good afternoon, George.
Afternoon to you, Chris.
Yeah, I must admit, I spent 2 years actually in Iraq working with the Iraqi people and with the American soldiers, so I had quite insight into the area. So apologies for going to Iraq. Well, I'd say no at the moment because I'm a great believer that we should wait until the report comes out until we get the true facts. Then the apology should actually be made if Tony Blair or certain people did make the wrong decisions.
Well, Labour has already concluded that they made the wrong decisions. What they haven't concluded is that they need to apologise for making the wrong decisions.
That's why I say we need to see the full facts report. And I think myself, is that I would say I was 2 years in Iraq. I was actually blown up there by terrorist bombs. I saw death all around me. So I think a person like me who's actually witnessed that sort of thing would like to see the true facts rather than people jump on the bandwagon or try and make political views on something they don't know the full story.
Well, we know the full story to this extent. We know that there were no weapons of mass destruction and therefore the war was based upon a lie. We know that 1 million people have died, and we know that Iraq has ceased to function as a single state, and that the Islamist fundamentalism of ISIS has cascaded everywhere in the world. That much we know, Chris.
Okay. It's the area of the ISIS army that's more so to create. I know that area very well. That's where I was actually operating for actually 2 years. I do agree more than anything else that we should not have gone there. Maybe we should have looked at the past history and the politics of the people, because the people around the area always have strong leadership from an autocratic leader. They've had that for thousands of years. Also, is people don't really understand that the Iraqis are very tribal people. I was at a place called Al-Qizit, and I also was running a place called Talafar, which is 25 k's away. I could not send a local Iraqi from Al-Qizit to Talafar because they were going into a different tribal area. So, yes, they're very, very tribal on that aspect. So people didn't really understand their full politics. Maybe if they read Laurence Olivia's book, they may have actually learned a bit more. But
sorry is the hardest word for Labour, but Jeremy Corbyn says he should say sorry. Let's see if you think that should be a priority. Jeremy Corbyn wants to say sorry for the Iraq war. Is he right? should that be a first priority? Bill is in Chessington. Bill, go ahead.
Good morning, George. Lovely programme.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Anyway, what it's about is regarding the Corbyn situation. I think he's off the pace of them. He's actually beat them to the ball, and basically he knows what to say. They're like...
all they're saying is... all they're doing is talking about him, Bill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they just talk about him. But, I mean, when they say about the people he's been with, what about Blair when he went with Gaddafi? No one says nothing about that.
Kissing in the tent in the desert.
Correct. So, basically speaking, he's hit to what everyone wants to know. And these other three just aren't there. So basically, his first job, obviously, is when he gets it, I think he will, but when he does, is to actually run the party as it should be run, as what all the people want, and basically be a good opposition, because that's what's needed. I mean, the Conservatives will probably make their own mistakes, but he's the type of guy who can put the boot in on it. So I think he's the man.
Well said, Bill. Annie is in Lancashire. Let's hear from her. Go ahead, Annie.
So, I just wanted to say that if Jeremy Corbyn wins, this leadership election, and I'm sure he will, and I'm sure a lot of people are really hoping that he actually has a chance of becoming PM. Then I think the first thing he should do if he ever became Prime Minister is to immediately put a stop to all this austerity and to start putting back together our public services and our welfare state, which by the end of another 5 years of this, they're just going to be virtually destroyed. I mean, I can see that as a disabled person who has to use the NHS a lot and social care, that things are just getting worse and worse. I mean, I just can't believe some of the things that are happening really in the NHS at the moment. I mean, where I live, the Morecambe Bay Health Trust actually is in terrible financial straits, and it literally is just falling apart. Even my GP said that to me, that things are falling apart. Like the phlebotomy service virtually doesn't function anymore, which is, I'm housebound or bedbound most of the time, and she, would send them out to take blood from me if it was needed. But now that service has fallen apart, and she is having to come out herself when she hasn't got time to leave the surgery to come out and just take my blood, and come out for no other reason for me but just to do that menial task which the phlebotomy service should be doing, but that's just disintegrated. It's falling apart.
Indeed, falling apart. Philip in Guildford, tell us what you think.
Hello, good morning to you, George. Yes,
morning.
It's great to hear you on the radio.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, I just want to make my view known for what it's worth, that I hope that the views of obviously now hundreds of thousands of ordinary members of the public who are joining the Labour Party make their views very known, and that the local leadership and the constituency Labour parties put the hats on straight of their seating members of Parliament who are there to represent the views and interests of their members.
Yeah, or they can stand as independents, They can stand as independents like me, and take their chances. But almost none of them would succeed. They're only there in Parliament with their big wages and their big expenses claims because they've got the name Labour attached to their own name.
Yes, George, I think that's absolutely right, and shame on them for taking the King's shilling, enjoying what goes with the position that they have been honoured with as being elected members of the Labour Party, and yet potentially flying in the face of their local constituency members, whose individual constituencies up and down the country cannot, all but a blind man would know that the vibrancy and vitality in their constituencies has been completely reinvigorated by none other than Jeremy Corbyn. It's not because of Yvette Cooper et al. It's because of the contribution that Jeremy Corbyn has made to this whole debate.
No doubt about that. I think they'd all have to acknowledge that, Philip. Thanks for that. Faz is in Leytonstone. Faz, welcome.
Welcome, sir. Nice to speak to you, George. Some may not agree with me, but I think foreign policy is the way forward, really, because if you look at the problems we got around the world, even in economics, they do, and are having to spend billions on Trident. I think you should look at foreign policy, especially, and you will know more about this than even me, is the forgotten Palestine, Kashmir.
Indeed, yes.
And it's still occupied country, still human rights abuses. Yeah, before Tony Blair came to power, the Labour Party was fully committed to seeing a democracy in Kashmir. As soon as Mani, your friend, and you can see where I'm coming from, came in, that was totally put on the back burner.
Indeed. Although it still remains the Labour Party's policy, I know, because I wrote it. Faz, in Leytonstone, thanks for that. Lawrence is right-wing, and he's in Dagenham. And he quite likes Corbyn. Let's hear. Go ahead, Lawrence.
Hello, George.
Hi.
I'm not that right-wing. I'm a hypocritical right-winger.
Okay.
But before I get onto that, I'd just like to mention one person very quickly from Parliament, the most honest man I ever met in Parliament, and I had the privilege of buying him his cigarettes and a coffee from time to time. And that was Brian Hoare, the man who stood outside of
Indeed.
the House of Parliament for years.
Indeed. God rest him, yes.
Yes, God rest him, a true hero. What a lovely fella. And over those years, he went this amazing colour, and he looked so healthy. And then I thought, that must be the proper colour of an Englishman. I wonder if anyone's got a photo of him. I bet he'd been there for about 8 years in the sun, you know.
Yes, yes.
He went this amazing colour.
He did, you're right. He was a beautiful mahogany, yeah.
Yes, that's right, yeah. I'm glad you remember. But George, I mean, I live in a really strong Labour borough, or a historically strong Labour borough of
Dagenham, yeah.
Dagenham. Now, you know what we did 8 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what we did.
Yeah.
But it was not because we're a bunch of Nazis or anything like that. We just wasn't getting listened to. And our local Labour councillors, they was on a completely different planet. They kind of changed overnight.
Well, I absolutely agree with that. And I'm one of those, Lawrence, who's always made this point that white, working-class people were betrayed and abandoned by New Labour. Yeah, and that's why some of them were seduced by the far right, and some by the not quite so far right, UKIP, and some even by the Tory party, because people felt that the white working class had been betrayed and abandoned. And in a place like Dagenham, that seemed plausible.
We wasn't being listened to, George, so we threw our toys out of the pram. That's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
We threw our toys out of the pram. But Corbyn... It's great to hear him talk, and I hope he gets in. And it will be an absolutely fantastic thing if he does apologise. If he does apologise for the war, my only fear is the moment he gets in, the papers are waiting to trap him. The moment he gets in, you're going to see so much dirt in the papers.
Well, I think they've thrown all they can throw. To be honest, Jeremy has led, as far as I know, a blameless life in terms of personal conduct.
You know what the papers like yourself, George?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
ammunition bag.
Well, that's right. But Jeremy has led a blameless life in terms of personal conduct, I believe, and his politics are his politics, and they're on his sleeve. And
interesting days, George. Interesting days.
Very much so. Lawrence, thanks for the call, mate. Sharpal is in Leyton. Let's hear.
George.
Walaikum salam. Go ahead.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm one of the members, one of the new members that have joined to the Labour Party, and I would really, really be happy if Jeremy Corbyn did apologise for the Iraq war, because it was an illegal war that Tony Blair took us to, and I think that's one of the first things he should do when he is elected, that is to apologise for the Iraq war. And also the Labour Party has, entire Hamlets, it's disappointed us with Lutful Rahman, as you know, the mayor of Tar Hamlets. They've put all this negative propaganda against him and got him off.
Sharpal's lost, but thanks for the call. Sean in Matfield, quickly. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, George, you and I are probably opposite in political terms, but we'll agree on this one. Jeremy Corbyn actually commentating for the whole nation when he apologised for that war.
Goodness, what's happening with the phone lines? Thanks for that, Sean. I want to know what you believe the next Labour leader's priority should be. John tweets that the priority of the next leader of the Labour Party should be to become Prime Minister. And he says that is something out of the reach of Jeremy Corbyn. Someone else makes the point, quite a good one, that Jeremy Corbyn can ride his bike anywhere in London. Tony Blair can't leave the house. without security. 03456060973. That's the number to call. Coming to the end of a week that I've enjoyed. I hope you have. With me standing in for the great James O'Brien, who'll be back on Monday. John's on the line in Greenwich. Let's hear what he thinks. Go ahead, John.
Oh, yes. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
It's a pleasure to hear you, Mr. Galloway.
Thank you.
I'm a dormant member of the Tory party, and you could describe me as quite right-wing, but I like to listen to yourself. But I also find the Labour Party, of which my father was a member, they've lost the plot. They put people like Christian Hunt, they drop him into a constituency of Stoke-on-Trent, and I'm sure there's someone in Stoke-on-Trent...
Doesn't strike me as a real Stoke man, I must say.
Not at all. And they get someone else from Hampstead, some young lady who looks pretty. She's a friend of Mendelssohn, and she gets a Liverpool constituency. They don't like her there. Why don't they recruit locals? There must be hundreds of good people who could serve in the Labour Party. And what we've got now is Corby's okay. I quite like him, to be honest. But the other three, they're pathetic.
Do you think you'd vote for Labour if Corbyn was the leader?
Oh, no, I wouldn't vote for them, of course not. But I can still like him. I respect him.
Okay, very fair point.
If he gets elected, and now they want to change the system of election because they've let a load of new members in.
They won't be able to do that. They won't be able to do that because they were the ones who invented this system. And Tony Blair told us just a few months ago that he wished he'd introduced this system himself. Well, it's too late. Hoist on your own petard. Charlie is in Crawley. Let's hear from him. Go ahead, Charlie.
Hello?
Yes, go on.
I'd like to say that I think the next Labour leader really needs to end austerity. It's causing just so much problems in this country. It's really affecting a lot of the poorest people in this country. And actually, we need to know that we need to have a party that is truly on the left and not some sort of Tory light party. I actually think that as well, which would be good about Jeremy Corbyn, is that he will actually back the trade unions again. We've got some of the worst trade union laws in the Western world.
Did you sign up, Charlie? Are you a voter?
Oh, I'm a Labour member, and I voted for Jeremy Corbyn as my first preference.
Who did you vote for deputy, if I may ask?
I voted for Stella Creasy for deputy.
Okay. Thanks for that, Charlie. Very interesting to talk to you. Ahlam is in Kensington and on the line.
Hi, George.
Hi.
It's Ahlam. What I would love to see is a return to restore back of the British values, particularly in foreign policies. If we are serious about drying the fertile grounds for recruitment to ISIS and other extremist groups, we have to go back and look at our moral stand concerning, for instance, Palestinian issues in particular, which is a top reason that has been used and exploited by Islamist groups. We need to stand up by international legality. In fact, we should be the mouth of the moral values that British stood for and admit responsibility and insist and lead a campaign, an international campaign, to stand by the Palestinian rights based on international legality in particular. I really liked what Corbyn have done, the apology. It is about time to look back at those wrongdoing, which was taken by individual decision. You know, Blair has taken the whole country into a deceptive path. It's about time to look at these things. And the most important thing is to reach to diasporas in this country, to make them the bridge of understanding for a new peaceful culture everywhere. Diasporas in this country is based on their equality and rights. You know, no matter how, nothing is perfect, nothing is complete, but at least we know very well that we are better observed under this system, this legal system, rather than back in where we come from.
Wonderfully said, Ahlam, and beautiful to hear your voice again. It's been a long time. Lane is in Seaham in County Durham. Let's go up there. Go ahead, Lane.
Finally, Mr. G. I finally got to speak to you.
Welcome.
I think Corbyn's first priority really is, obviously he should apologise for Iraq, but I think his first priority has to be to look into the DWP and the amount of people who are on disability sanctions have ended up supposedly killing themselves due to the restrictions and the links with the restrictions in the finances they had for care that they didn't get. There's a big thing on at the moment with the DWP to release the exact amount of figures regarding this, and I think there's an inquiry on at the moment, and they seem to be pushing back the appeals and stuff. There are a number of disability charities who state it could be in the thousands, or could be just in the hundreds or whatever. Either way, if it is attributed to the sanctions being placed on them, the most vulnerable people in our society who need help more than anyone, and who are also being victimised daily for being disabled, which they cannot help, that needs to be looked into first, more than anything, and that will trigger off it'll sort of snowball into the rest of austerity and what it actually means. And I do feel it is an ideological approach to shaping society as opposed to a necessity. I think there is a better way.
Well, then, that's been one of the motifs of the show this week, a week that's now coming to a close, for me, of course, that disabled people, and we've had some very memorable calls from disabled people, are being hunted, basically, by one of the richest men in Parliament, a Parliament well full of rich men, Ian Duncan Smith. People in wheelchairs, people in electronic wheelchairs with cerebral palsy, people being hunted when their father's body is still sitting in the living room waiting to be buried and being sanctioned and so on. And your call is in the same vein, that the weakest and most vulnerable people in our society are being hunted for pennies, really, because the saving involved is so pitifully small, at least by comparison with that which is being avoided or evaded at the top of the tree by the richest people. And there sometimes seems no energy being expended at all to pursue them. So I'm glad in a way that you were the last call of the week, because in a way you've brought us back to where we started. Britain is an unfair country. It's better than many others, but it's not as good as it could be. It's not as good as it should be. But we may be in now new political horizons. Assuming Andy Burnham's call for a halt to the Labour leadership, well, that's an exaggeration. He hasn't quite called for that yet, but he's demanded a meeting which may lead to a call for a halt. Imagining that does not succeed, I think we're entering a new era. I would say New Labour, but of course it's the antithesis of New Labour. It's been absolutely marvellous for me. I've thoroughly enjoyed every minute of my time sitting in for James O'Brien. I do hope that it's been marvellous for you too. It won't have been as good as the real thing. He's back on Monday. I'm done. I'm off to do some hunting and gathering.